The twin suns burned above the alien marketplace, painting the world in colors that didn't look natural to human eyes. The air was thick with smoke, the smell of burning oil, and something worse, something like fear. Hundreds of traders shouted in strange voices, waving their arms as they sold everything from broken ship parts to strange glowing fruits. But in the darkest corners of the market, there was something far more terrible on display. The human traveler moved through the crowd, his boots leaving prints in the dusty ground. His clothes were old, patched many times. He carried nothing but a small bag of credits, his last savings. He was looking for work, maybe a cheap ride to the next colony. But when he turned down a narrow path lined with cages, his steps slowed. He heard it before he saw its soft, trembling voices. A sound that didn't belong in a place like this. Next lot. The auctioneer roared. The crowd gathered fast, laughing and pushing each other for a better view. Inside a rusted cage, two small figures sat huddled together. Their hair was tangled, ears pointed like a cat's, tails wrapped tight around themselves as if to hide. Their big golden eyes reflected the sunlight like mirrors. Two alien cat girls, the auctioneer shouted, hitting the cage with a metal rod. The girls flinched. Weak, but fresh. Meat for your tables, or slaves for your kitchens. Who will start the bid? The traveler froze. Meat? Did he hear that right? The crowd laughed. Some aliens shouted numbers, waving credit chips in the air. Others joked about recipes. One said he would feed them to his hounds. Another asked if their fur was worth anything. The girls pressed against the back of the cage, shaking. They didn't speak. One of them looked at the traveler for just a second before dropping her eyes again, as if hope itself was dangerous here. The human felt his chest tighten. This wasn't what he came here for. He was almost broke. His ship barely had fuel. If he spent his credits here, he would have nothing left. No way off this planet. No food for himself. The auctioneer laughed at the small starting bids. Come on, 2 for the price of 1. You'll never find meat like this again. The traveler looked at the girls. They were so thin their bones showed under the skin. Their tails curled tight like ropes. They couldn't be older than teenagers. And the way they held each other. They weren't livestock. They were children. 50 credits. Someone shouted that the auctioneer groaned. 50? You insult me. 60. Another voice called. The traveler's hand closed around his bag. That was almost everything he had. He could walk away. He should walk away, but the crowd's voices grew louder, uglier. One bidder joked about skinning them alive. Another laughed about slow cooking. The traveler felt his stomach turn. Before he knew what he was doing, his voice cut through the noise. 100. The crowd went silent. The auctioneer turned, surprised. 100? From the human? The bidder with 60 credits cursed. Waste of money, he spat. The auctioneer grinned. Sold. He unlocked the cage with a rusty key and shoved the girls forward. They stumbled out, too weak to stand straight. The traveler handed over his credits with a shaking hand. That was all of it. Every coin he had saved from years of work. Gone in seconds. The crowd laughed again, but this time at him. What will you do with them, human? One alien sneered. Can't eat them yourself. Too much fur, another shouted. Maybe he's starting a zoo. The traveler ignored them. He crouched down so he was eye level with the girls. They stared at him with wide, empty eyes, not moving, not speaking. Like they didn't believe this was real. It's okay, he said quietly. You're safe now. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure it was true. He led them away from the market while the traders laughed behind him. The girls followed silently, never letting go of each other's hands. People in the crowd watched them go with strange expressions, some mocking, some curious, and some afraid. Why afraid? The traveler felt the weight of their stares. Something wasn't right here. As they left the market behind, he glanced at the girls again. They hadn't spoken a single word. Their eyes darted to every shadow, every noise, like hunted animals. He had spent his last credits to save them. But save them from what? The suns were dipping lower when the traveler led the two cat girls away from the market. The laughter of the traders still echoed behind him like a bad dream. He didn't look back. His small cargo ship was parked miles away, past broken roads and rusting metal towers. The girls walked close together, their tails wrapped tight around their waists, ears twitching at every sound. They hadn't spoken a single word since leaving the market. Their golden eyes moved everywhere: shadows, sky, even the cracks in the ground, as if danger could come from anywhere. The traveler noticed it. This wasn't normal fear. This was the kind of fear animals carried when the hunter was still near. He slowed his steps. "You're safe now," he said again, his voice calm. But the girls didn't answer. They didn't even look at him. The road out of the city was empty, except for a few passing trucks and traders heading in the other direction. The traveler's old cargo speeder sat where he left it, paint peeling, engine coughing every time it started. He opened the back door and waved for the girls to climb in. They hesitated, looking at each other first. Then the older one gave a small nod, and they slipped inside. Still holding hands. As he started the engine, the traveler realized something. When the auctioneer opened their cage back in the market, they could have run. But they didn't. T.Y. The speeder rattled down the cracked road toward the hills where his ship waited. The sky burned red with twin sunsets, throwing long shadows across the ground. The girls sat in the back, silent as statues. Finally, the traveler spoke again. "What are your names?" No answer. He tried again. "Can you understand me?" The younger one looked at him for half a second, then quickly away. The traveler sighed. Maybe they didn't speak his language. Or maybe they just didn't trust him. Not yet. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 ration bars, the only food he had left. He handed them back. The girls hesitated, then took them slowly, like they were afraid it might be a trick. They ate without a word, eyes still darting toward the sky. Something about the way they moved. It was strange. Too careful. Too alert. Like soldiers. The speeder hit a bump, and the younger girl let out a small cry before covering her mouth quickly, as if she had revealed too much. The older one touched her shoulder, whispering something in a language the traveler didn't know. The words were soft, musical, but carried a sharp edge. He caught one word repeated twice. "Hunters." He didn't like the sound of it. "Who's hunting you?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. No answer. The older girl stared out the window, ears twitching. By the time they reached the hills, the sky was dark. His small cargo ship sat on a flat patch of rock, looking more like a metal box than something that could fly. It wasn't much, but it was home. The girls stepped out of the speeder slowly, their eyes scanning the horizon again. The younger one's tail bristled at a distant noise. Just wind through broken towers, or maybe not. The traveler led them up the ramp into the ship. Inside was cramped and narrow hallway, 2 tiny rooms, 1 storage bay. He showed them a small cabin with 2 bunks. "You can rest here," he said softly. The girl stood in the doorway, not moving. Finally, the older one stepped inside, pulling the younger with her. They sat on the bed, still holding hands, as if letting go might be dangerous. Later that night, the traveler sat in the cockpit, staring at the empty fuel gauge. He had spent his last credits on them. Now he couldn't leave this planet until he found work or begged for help. He heard movement behind him. The older girl stood there, silent, eyes shining in the dim light. "You need to tell me what's going on," he said quietly. "Why were they selling you for meat? Who's after you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the dark sky through the cockpit window. Her ears twitched. "They will come," she whispered finally, voice broken but clear. Soon, the traveler's heart skipped. Who will come? She didn't answer. She just closed the door and returned to her room, leaving him alone with the hum of the ship's old engines. Outside, far away beyond the hills, something in the night sky moved. The old cargo ship sat quiet under the twin moons, its metal skin glowing faintly in the pale light. Inside, the human traveler tried to sleep, but his mind kept turning like broken gears. The girl's words echoed in his head. They will come. Who would come? Hunters? Soldiers? He didn't know. He only knew one thing: he had no weapons, no allies, and no money left. If trouble arrived, this ship would be nothing more than a coffin drifting in the dark. Hours passed. The wind outside whistled through the rocks, carrying the faint smell of dust and smoke from the far-off city. Suddenly, he heard its soft voices. The traveler opened his eyes. It wasn't the wind. It was coming from the small cabin where the girls slept. He sat up quietly and listened. Voices were strange, soft and musical, but sharp like the edge of a blade. He didn't understand the words, but the tone carried fear and anger. The older girl spoke fast, the younger one interrupting with whispers that trembled like leaves in a storm. Then he heard one word in broken English. Run. Soon, the traveler felt his chest tighten. He stood and moved slowly toward their door. It wasn't fully closed. Through the crack, he saw the older girl holding something small and metallic in her hand. It glowed faintly blue. A device? A weapon? He couldn't tell. She spoke to the younger one again, voice low and urgent. The younger girl shook her head, eyes wide with fear. The traveler didn't understand their language, but one thing was clear: whatever was coming, they believed it would find them here. Suddenly, the older girl stopped talking. Her golden eyes snapped to the door where he stood. For a long moment, neither moved. The traveler felt like a child caught spying on wolves. Then she slowly closed her fist around the glowing device. The light vanished out the door, shut back in the cockpit. The traveler sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the dark horizon outside. This was insane. He had bought them to save them from the market, not to get hunted across the stars. He thought about leaving them somewhere safe, maybe at one of the colony shelters. But he knew the hunters, whoever they were, would find them again. The girls weren't just refugees. They were something more. Something valuable. Hours later, just before dawn, the younger girl appeared in the cockpit. She moved silently, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. She stood beside him, clutching a blanket around her thin shoulders. "You should leave," she whispered in broken English. The traveler turned. "Leave? Where?" She shook her head. "Far, before they come." "Who?" he asked softly. "Hunters?" She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the sky, glowing faintly in the starlight. "They follow." "Always," she said finally. Her voice cracked like someone much older than she looked. Before he could ask more, the older girl rushed into the cockpit. Her ears were sharp, her movements fast. "They are here," she said in a clear, firm voice. The traveler froze. "How do you?" She pointed out the window. In the distance, small lights moved across the horizon, fast, low, and silent. Not trading ships. Not rescue shuttles. Hunters. The traveler's stomach dropped. "How did they find us so fast?" He muttered. The older girl's eyes glowed faintly gold. "They always find us." He didn't ask why. He didn't want to know. Instead, he ran for the engine room. The old cargo ship wasn't ready to fly, but he didn't have a choice. The hunters were coming, and this planet offered no hiding places. The girls followed him, the younger one clutching her blanket, the older one moving like someone preparing for war. The engines coughed to life, filling the ship with smoke and heat. The ground rumbled under the thrusters. Outside, the hunter lights spread wider, circling like wolves around prey. The traveler grabbed the flight controls. "Hold on." The ship lifted off the rocks, metal groaning like it would fall apart any second. The younger girl clung to the seat. The older one stood behind him, eyes fixed on the hunters below. "They won't stop," she said quietly. The traveler didn't answer. He pushed the ship higher into the clouds, but in his heart, he knew she was right. That night was only the beginning. Something told him the hunters weren't after money. They wanted the girls for something far bigger and far deadlier. The old cargo ship shook as it climbed through the clouds. Metal panels rattled like they might tear off at any moment. The traveler kept his hands tight on the controls, forcing the ship higher. Below, the hunter ships spread like black shadows across the desert, their lights cutting through the night. They moved fast, far too fast for traders or police. These were professionals. The traveler felt sweat running down his back. His ship was old, slow, barely held together. If the hunters gave chase, he didn't stand a chance. Behind him, the older cat girl stood silent, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark cockpit. She didn't look afraid. She looked ready. The hunters didn't stay on the ground for long. One by one, their ships lifted off, black wings unfolding like metal insects. They rose through the clouds, engines screaming as they locked onto the cargo ship above. The younger girl gasped and grabbed her sister's hand. "They found us," she whispered, voice trembling. "They always find us," the older girl said, almost like a prayer. The first blast came from below. A beam of red light shot past the cargo ship, so close it burned the paint on the hull. The traveler swore and threw the controls hard to the left. The whole ship tilted, sending crates and tools crashing to the floor. The younger girl screamed. The older one didn't even flinch. "Can't this thing go faster?" she asked sharply. The traveler gave her a look. "This thing is older than I am. Be glad it still flies." Another blast shook the ship, this one hitting close enough to make the lights flicker. The traveler pushed the engines to full power. They coughed, groaned, then roared louder as the ship shot toward the upper atmosphere. But the hunters were closing in. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. A screen showed 4 hunter ships behind them, one on each side, one climbing fast above. They were boxing him in. "Who are they?" The traveler shouted over the noise. "Why are they after you?" The older girl didn't answer right away. She was watching the hunters, her face hard and calm, as if she had seen this before. "They want us dead," she said finally. "All of us. All of who?" She didn't reply. The hunters fired again, this time from both sides. The cargo ship shook violently. Warning lights lit up across the control panel. The traveler slammed a hand on the dashboard. "We can't take much more of this." He turned to the older girl. "If you have any ideas, now's the time." For the first time, she looked at him directly. Her golden eyes glowed brighter, almost burning. "Get us to space," she said. "We will handle the rest." The traveler stared at her like she was insane. You have no weapons, no shields, nothing." "Just get us there," she repeated. With no better plan, he aimed the ship straight up. The engines screamed, metal shook, and the black sky swallowed them as they rose higher and higher. The hunters followed. One ship swung ahead, blocking their path. Another moved below, cutting off escape. The traveler's hands shook on the controls. There was nowhere left to run. Then it happened. The older girl reached into her clothes and pulled out the small metallic device the traveler had seen earlier. It glowed faintly blue, like a heartbeat made of light. She pressed it once. A pulse of energy shot out in all directions, invisible but powerful. The ship's lights flickered, but the hunter ships jerked violently as if struck by a giant unseen hand. 2 of them spun out of control, crashing into each other before falling back toward the planet below. The traveler stared. What was that?" The older girl didn't answer. She was already pressing the device again. This time, the pulse went farther. The remaining hunter ships turned sharply and pulled back, like wolves suddenly afraid of the prey they were chasing. One of the pilots shouted something over an open channel before disappearing into the clouds. "Call the others," The royal heirs are alive. The traveler's stomach dropped. Royal heirs? He turned to the girls. The younger one clung to her sister's arm, trembling. The older one finally sat down, her face pale but calm. You have many questions, she said softly. We will answer soon. Soon? The traveler pointed at the empty sky where the hunters had vanished. They're going to come back with more ships. Who are you people? The older girl looked at him with eyes too old for her young face. The last of our kind, she said quietly. And they will not stop until we are gone. The cargo ship limped through the dark space above the planet, its old engines groaning like dying beasts. The hunter ships had pulled back, but the traveler knew it wasn't over. They would return. And next time, they wouldn't just be 4 or 5. They would come like a storm dot inside the cockpit. The warning lights glowed red. Fuel almost gone. Hull damage critical. One more hit, and the ship would break apart like glass dot. The traveler rubbed his face with shaking hands. I spent my last credit saving you, he muttered to the older girl. Now we're out of fuel, out of time, and out of luck. The older girl stood behind him, her golden eyes fixed on the empty space outside. They will come again, she said softly, almost like she had seen this happen before. The younger girl sat in the corner, hugging her knees, her tail wrapped tight around her like a shield. Her big eyes darted to every sound, every flicker of light. The traveler turned on her sister. You used that thing, he said, pointing at the small glowing device she carried. It knocked their ships out of the sky. Why didn't you use it earlier? Why not destroy all of them? The older girl shook her head. It only works once before it must rest, she explained. And even then, they will adapt. The traveler blinked. Adapt? They always do, she whispered. Suddenly, a beep echoed through the cockpit. The traveler froze. He knew that sound. Tracking lock. He checked the radar screen. 5 new signals were moving toward them fast. They're back, he said, through clenched teeth. The younger girl whimpered softly. The older one simply closed her eyes for a moment, like she expected this. The traveler slammed the controls forward. Hold on. The ship roared to life, climbing higher into space, engines coughing smoke and fire as they pushed past their limits. But the hunter ships were faster. Red beams cut across the black sky. One hit the side of the cargo ship, spinning it violently. The traveler fought the controls as alarms screamed in his ears. The younger girl cried out, grabbing her sister as crates crashed around them. Another hit. This one tore a hole through the storage bay. Air hissed out into space before the emergency shield sealed the breach. The traveler cursed. We can't keep this up. The older girl moved toward the control panel. What are you doing? He shouted. We must call them, she said. Call who? She didn't answer. Instead, she touched the small glowing device again, this time pressing a different side. A soft pulse of light filled the cockpit. It wasn't like before. This one didn't attack the hunters. It went outward, far beyond them, vanishing into the stars. What was that? The traveler demanded. A signal, she said quietly. They will hear it. Who will hear it? She didn't answer. The hunters were closing in. One moved ahead, firing directly at the cockpit. The traveler swerved hard, missing the blast by inches. His ship shook like it would fall apart. Your signal better bring a miracle, he growled. It will, the older girl said. But for the first time, he saw something in her eyes. Not confidence. Fear. The younger girl suddenly grabbed his sleeve. They kill all, she said in broken English. Her voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. All our people. Gone. We last. The traveler's hands froze on the controls. The last? He looked between them, his stomach sinking. These weren't just runaways. They weren't just orphans. They were the final survivors of a whole species, and the hunters wanted to finish the job. The cargo ship spun as another blast hit the tail. The engines screamed. Warnings blared. One more hit and they were done. Then out of nowhere, one of the hunter ships exploded. A blinding flash lit up the stars as a massive shadow moved across space. The traveler stared out the cockpit window. Heart-pounding ships, dozens of them, big ones. He had never seen ships like these, sleek, glowing, carrying strange symbols on their silver hulls. They moved with terrifying speed, cutting through the hunters like they were nothing. The older girl watched silently, her golden eyes shining. "They heard us," she whispered. The traveler looked at her. "Who?" She turned to him slowly. "Our mother's fleet," she said softly. "The Royal Guard." The traveler's mouth went dry. Royal Guard, royal heirs. He realized then he hadn't saved two helpless girls. He had saved the last princesses of a fallen empire. And now the whole galaxy would burn for it. The royal fleet filled the sky like a wall of silver fire. Their warships moved fast and silent, their glowing engines cutting through the darkness. The traveler gripped the controls of his old cargo ship, staring at the massive vessels that now surrounded him. Each one was bigger than a city, weapons glowing along their sides. Beside him, the older catgirl stood tall, her golden eyes shining brighter than ever. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even surprised. "They came," she said softly, almost to herself. The younger girl clutched her sister's arm, eyes wide with awe and fear. "Mother's fleet," she whispered. The traveler blinked. "Mother's fleet?" Neither answered him. Before he could ask again, the hunters returned. Dozens of black ships burst from the far side of the planet, engines screaming like angry beasts. They didn't even hesitate. They came straight for the cargo ship and the girls inside it. The traveler's heart pounded. The royal fleet was here, yes. But the hunters didn't care. They wanted the girls dead before the royal guard could protect them, and his ship, old and broken, was right in the middle of it all. The first wave of hunters fired without warning. Red beams sliced through space, lighting the darkness with deadly fire. The royal fleet answered back. Blue light exploded from their guns, shattering the hunters' ships like glass. One after another, enemy vessels burned and fell apart, drifting in pieces toward the planet below. The traveler gripped the controls tighter. The shockwaves rocked his tiny ship like a leaf in a storm. "This is suicide," he muttered. The older girl moved closer to the cockpit window, her face hard and calm. "They want us," she said softly. "They don't care who dies with us." The traveler turned sharply. Why? Why are you so important?" She finally looked at him. Her eyes glowed like molten gold. "We are the last daughters of the royal house," she said. "If we live, the empire lives. If we die, it dies forever." The traveler stared at her. He had spent his last credits to save two frightened girls. He had thought he was rescuing children from a cruel market. He hadn't known he was carrying the future of an empire in his ship. Another blast rocked the cargo bay. Warning lights screamed across the dashboard. "They're targeting us." The traveler shouted. "Of course they were. The hunters didn't want the fleet. They wanted the girls dead before the royal ships could reach them." The older girl turned to him. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "You must take us to their flagship," she said. "Now." The traveler laughed bitterly. "In this ship? We're one hit away from falling apart." "You must," she repeated, "or they will keep coming." The royal fleet fought hard, but more hunters kept arriving. Like shadows, they poured from every direction, firing without mercy. The traveler dodged blast after blast, the old ship screaming in protest. The younger girl clung to her sister, tears streaking her face. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They never stop." The older girl touched her shoulder. "We end it today," she said softly. Suddenly, the royal flagship appeared through the smoke and fire, a massive silver warship, bigger than anything the traveler had ever seen. Its hull glowed with ancient symbols, its weapons blazing like suns. "Head there," the older girl ordered. The traveler didn't argue. He pushed the controls forward, the old engines coughing smoke as the cargo ship limped toward the flagship. But the hunters saw them. 3 ships broke through the royal defenses, diving straight for the traveler's ship. "Hold on!" he shouted. He twisted the controls hard, dodging one blast, then another. The third hit the tail, spinning the ship violently. The younger girl screamed. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The traveler fought the controls, teeth gritted. "We're not gonna make it." The older girl grabbed the glowing device again. "Wait!" the traveler shouted. "If you use that..." She didn't wait. A blinding pulse of blue light burst from the device. The 3 hunter ships froze mid-flight. For one heartbeat, they hung there, engines dead. Then they exploded. The traveler shielded his eyes as fire filled the sky. When the light faded, the flagship's massive hangar doors opened ahead, glowing like the mouth of a giant beast. The traveler's ship limped inside, smoke trailing behind it. The hangar doors closed just as the hunters regrouped for another attack. For the first time since this began, they were safe. Or so the traveler thought, because as the ship settled inside the flagship, the older girl whispered one last thing: "They won't stop. Not until the throne lives again. Or dies with us." The hangar doors of the royal flagship closed behind them with a deep metallic echo, shutting out the chaos of the battle outside. The traveler's old cargo ship landed hard on the deck, smoke rising from its battered engines. Inside the cockpit, the traveler let go of the controls slowly. His hands were shaking. He had faced laser fire, hunters, and death itself. And now he sat inside the heart of a royal warship that wasn't even supposed to exist anymore. The older catgirl stood straight, her golden eyes glowing brighter than ever. The younger one clung to her arm, wide-eyed and silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the hangar filled with footsteps. Dozens of armored soldiers surrounded the ship, their armor silver with blue markings that matched the glowing symbols on the walls. Their helmets covered their faces, but their movements were sharp and disciplined, like they had trained for war all their lives. The traveler stepped out slowly, hands raised. "Look," he said, his voice tired. "I just brought them here. I don't want trouble." The soldiers ignored him. Their eyes were on the 2 girls stepping off the ship. Then, as one, the soldiers dropped to one knee. The traveler froze. Royal salute. An older soldier stepped forward, removing his helmet. His face was scarred, his eyes tired but sharp. He looked at the girls with something like relief and pain. "Princesses," he said softly. "We thought you were gone." The traveler turned sharply. "Princesses?" The older girl nodded slowly. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice steady. She touched the younger one's shoulder. "This is my sister Sira, daughters of the last empress." The traveler felt his stomach twist. He had spent his last credits on them, saved them from being sold like meat. And all this time, they were royal heirs to a dead empire. But before he could speak, alarms blared across the flagship. A voice shouted over the comms, "Hunters regrouping. More ships incoming. They are throwing everything at us." The traveler cursed. "They just won't stop, will they?" The older soldier turned to Lyra. "They fear you," he said. "If the royal bloodline lives, the empire can rise again. They want it ended forever." Lyra's eyes hardened. "Then it ends tonight," she said softly. The traveler stared at her. "Ends? What do you mean ends?" Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were calm, but there was something heavy behind them. "The throne does not just need heirs," she said. "It needs power, unity, a symbol for our people to rise again." Sira, the younger sister, clung tighter to her arm. "Sister, no," she whispered, voice shaking. Lyra knelt beside her. "We cannot keep running," she said softly. "Mother's fleet came because I called it. But the throne will only rise if I claim it. Tonight." The traveler shook his head. "You've been hunted across planets. You've been starving in cages. And now you want to walk back into power? Lyra looked at him calmly. It is the only way the hunters will stop. Kill me, and they win. Crown me, and they fall. The traveler stared at her. She was barely more than a girl, yet she spoke like someone carrying the weight of whole worlds. Another explosion rocked the flagship. The older soldiers shouted orders. The royal fleet was returning fire, but the hunters were coming in waves now, desperate to break through before the throne could rise again. The traveler turned to Lyra. If you go out there, they'll kill you. She stood, tall and unshaken. If I don't, they will never stop killing all of us. The throne room was deep inside the flagship. The traveler followed as soldiers led the sisters through glowing corridors filled with strange symbols and old banners torn by war. In the center of the throne room stood a tall, silver seat glowing faintly with power. Lyra stepped forward slowly. Sira held her hand, eyes wide with fear. Once I take the throne, Lyra whispered, the Empire lives again. She looked back at the traveler. And you, the one who saved us, will always be under its protection. Outside, the battle raged. The hunters threw themselves at the royal fleet, desperate to stop what was coming. But it was too late. Lyra placed her hand on the throne. Light exploded through the room, flowing up the walls, through the ship, and out into space like a beacon. The royal fleet roared in answer, weapons blazing brighter than ever. The hunters froze as the signal reached them. Across the galaxy, their allies would hear it. The Empire had heirs again. The traveler stood back, watching the sisters. He had spent his last credits on two frightened girls. Now the galaxy would remember them as queens, and him as the man who changed history with one choice in a dusty marketplace.